It's official. Aemon One-Eye has the Sapphire Eye. During the dance, Vhagar is the oldest and largest dragon at around 170 years old. Dreamfire is the second oldest dragon, but Dreamfire is not the second biggest dragon. That goes to Vermithor, who, to be fair, is nearly as old as Dreamfire. The two of them, as well as Silverwing, are all right around 100 years old. Since Vermithor's last rider was the Old King, Jaehaerys the Conciliator, Vermithor has not been ridden for a couple decades. When Daemon found out about Aegon being crowned, he saw just one color, red, and he only saw one path forward, blood and fire. As a reminder, Daemon smashed his own wife's head in with a rock. He's not a good dude. Don't get me wrong, I love Daemon as a character. He's very interesting, but he is definitely not a good guy. Case in point, when Rhaenyra told Daemon about Viserys' dream, Daemon was so hurt by the idea that his brother had kept something from him that he choked Rhaenyra. Not cool. When Rhaenys told Rhaenyra that her father had died and Aegon had been crowned as his successor, Rhaenyra went into labor early. Unfortunately, that child was stillborn. Since Aegon was crowned with a conqueror's crown, Sir Eric stole the golden crown of her father and grandfather. Everyone bent the knee to Rhaenyra except for Rhaenys. It's also worth noting that the one person who didn't bow to Rhaenyra when Daemon introduced her was Rhaenys. Rhaenys chose to not bend the knee and to not bow because she had not yet spoken to her husband, Lord Corlys. The confrontation scene was a callback to the stolen dragon egg scene. Daemon on one side, Otto on the other. Rhaenyra and Syrax even landed in the same spot. When Rhaenyra walked past Otto's men-at-arms, it was a clear message that she was not afraid. When Rhaenyra showed up the first time, she got back the dragon egg without any bloodshed, and she accomplished the same thing this time as well. Rhaenyra prevented a fight. She also stuck up for herself and her claim to the throne, but at the same time, she showed restraint. Lord Otto showed her a page that Rhaenyra had torn out for Alicent when they were younger, and he offered her and her family very generous terms.
King's Landing will have my answer on the morrow.
One of the key scenes of this episode was a second work council. During this council, Daemon yelled at Rhaenyra since he was thirsty for blood. Rhaenyra responded by asking everyone to clear the room, and Rhaenys saw that. This played a part on what Rhaenys did next. Corlys' fever finally broke and he sailed back from Tarth. He finally admitted the truth, that he had been pursuing the Iron Throne for personal ambition. Corlys suggested that the Velaryons and their fleet remain neutral in terms of any upcoming conflict. Unfortunately, it was too late for that. Rhaenys pointed out that Jace, Luke, and Joff would be seen as threats to Aegon's rule. Rhaenys also pointed out that Rhaenyra was the one person holding off war. As a result, Corlys went down and pledged his men and his fleet to Rhaenyra, despite the fact that he still believed that Rhaenyra had played a role in his son's death. It's worth noting that Rhaenyra thanked Lord Corlys for his support, but Rhaenyra knew to whom she really owed her thanks.
Princess Rhaenys.
It's also worth noting that Queen Rhaenyra's very next words mirrored those of Princess Rhaenys.
A war is like to be fought over this treachery, to be sure, but that war is not mine to begin.
If war's first stroke is to fall, it will not be by my hand.
Rhaenyra held a meeting to discuss the best path forward for them and for the realm. At the beginning of this meeting, Rhaenyra invited both Rhaena and Baela to the painted table. Nevertheless, Rhaenyra was still surrounded by bloodthirsty men. Lord Bartimaeus Celtigar suggested that she take King's Landing by force since she has dragons, but Rhaenyra reminded them that the Greens have dragons too. Daemon suggested that they have more dragons, and although it was technically true, he massively oversold their position. Daemon, Rhaenyra, and Rhaenys have Caraxes, Syrax, and Melees, huge and formidable beasts. Jace, Luke, and Joff have Vermex, Arrax, and Taraxes, young dragons. Baela has Moondancer, which might be the smallest of the bunch. Daemon also suggested that they have 3 previously ridden dragons available, Vermithor, Silverwing, and Seasmoke. On top of that, there are 3 wild dragons on the island, the Cannibal, Sheepstealer, and Grey Ghost. In theory, that is a 13-4 advantage, but not really. 6 of those dragons don't yet have riders, and Rhaenyra just gave birth, so she's not fit for war. Baela's dragon, Moondancer, might be too small to ride, and the boy's dragons are very young, so the Blacks really only have 5 dragons at this time. On the flip side, the Greens have at least 3 dragons of fighting size, one of which is Vhagar. Jace came up with a good idea. Instead of using dragons as weapons, they could use dragons to deliver messages even faster than ravens. Since Dorne is not yet part of the 7 Kingdoms, they were not included in this particular discussion as a potential ally. The Hightowers rule out of Old Town, which is a part of the Reach, It's worth noting that the Hightowers are a powerful house, but they do not rule the Reach. At this time, the Tyrells rule the Reach. Since Tywin Lannister of Casterly Rock served Lord Otto Hightower for a long time in the Small Council, Daemon and Rhaenyra assumed that the Lannisters and thus the Westerlands would align themselves with the Greens. The good news is that Corlys had secured the Stepstones, so it will be difficult for the Lannister fleet to sail around the Arm of Dorne and get up to King's Landing. On top of that, the rest of Corlys' fleet is going to blockade the gullet which leads to King's Landing.
I should take Maelys and patrol the gullet myself.
Daemon is going to fly up to Harrenhal, which is the largest castle in the realm. Since it is so large, his plan is to use that as their primary base of operations before taking King's Landing. Since Harrenhal is in the Riverlands, Daemon also plans on trading with Lord Grover Tully of Riverrun. There are 3 other important locations: the Arryns of the Vale, the Starks of the North, and the Baratheons of the Stormlands. Rhaenyra's mother was Aemma Arryn, so they are related by blood. Moreover, the Vale is currently ruled by Lady Jane Arryn, a woman. On the one hand, Lady Jane might suspect that Daemon killed Rhea Royce. On the other hand, if Lady Jane were to side with Aegon instead of Rhaenyra on the account of sex, then her own legitimacy could be called into question. That is why Rhaenyra is fairly confident that she can win the support of the Vale. Queen Rhaenyra sent Jace up there on Vermax. After he does that, Jace's next mission is to win over Lord Cregan Stark of Winterfell. And here's where it gets interesting. Daemon had told Jace that he would show him the true meaning of loyalty, and he did so by threatening Sir Lorne and Sir Steffon into bending the knee. On the other hand, Rhaenyra pointed out that Cregan Stark is closer in age to Jace than herself, so she encouraged him to find common interest with Cregan. In Season 2, we will find out whether Jace heeds the advice of Daemon or Rhaenyra. That leaves us with just one more topic: the Baratheons of Storm's End. Rhaenys' father was Aemon Targaryen, and her mother was Jocelyn Baratheon. That is why Lord Borman referred to Rhaenys as his cousin during the tourney. On top of that, Lord Borman had sworn his loyalty to Rhaenyra. But that was a long time ago, and Borman is dead. Now, his son is the Lord of Storm's End. Aemon One-Eye got there first and agreed to marry one of Lord Borros' daughters. Unfortunately, Luke could not do the same since he had already been betrothed to Rhaena Targaryen. To make matters worse, Rhaenyra's letter was a threat, and Lord Borros did not like that.
We must remind these lords of the oaths they swore. And the cost of breaking them.
Although Lord Borros stopped Aemon from fighting Luke inside of his hall, he did let Aemon go, which allowed Vhagar to catch up to Arrax since the smaller dragon had a difficult time flying in the storm. Vhagar snapped at Arrax a few times, but it turns out Aemon wasn't actually trying to kill Luke. Aemon was simply repaying a debt by being a bully. Earlier in the episode, Syrax screamed when Rhaenyra screamed, evidence of the dragon bond. However, that bond is just a partial soul swap, so dragons can and do make decisions of their own. Luke lost control of Arrax, and Arrax shot Vhagar in the face. As a result, Aemon then lost control of Vhagar, and to his dismay, Vhagar killed Arrax, and thus, Luke. The episode began with Luke telling his mother that he didn't want to be the Lord of Tides, and in the end, his body washed up with the tides.
The Greens are coming for you, Rhaenyra. And for your children.
As a reminder, the episode also began with Rhaenyra going into labor early. So Rhaenyra didn't just lose Luke, she lost 2 children. Long story short, the first battles were fought with quills and ravens, but now the storm is broken and the dragons are going to dance and die.
This should not be happening.
It is fucking happening.
It is perhaps best not to know.